The stakes for Cyclone athletics right now are high. And right now, there's probably more ISU fans with high blood pressure than at any time in the past. But that's because we have a lot of teams competing for high marks. Football is back in the win column following a home win versus Cincinnati and is fighting for a chance to play in the Big 12 title game. Men's basketball is about to play the first ever top 5 opening round game in the Maui Invitational against Auburn. Women's basketball raised our blood pressure for other reasons on Wednesday night. And the peak of the week is another battle against the team out east tomorrow night when we meet them on the mat in Carver. Get ready for one of the most intense sequences of events that Cyclone Sports has ever had in this next week. Today is Friday, November 22nd. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod. We got an intense week here. We got a filled show here. This one's gonna be busy. This one's gonna be high paced here,
dude. November for Iowa State it's like some of the most intense times that we look forward to every year.
When you got highly rated teams that are competing for, high value targets, that it raises the stakes. It makes it more entertaining.
It's basically our own taste of March Madness before March comes.
Yes, but like only if half the teams in the field were Iowa State.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's the big one, the lead headline, football, back in the win column. Defeat Cincinnati 34-17. First half was kind of a slow back and forth, ended it at the score of 10-10. Kind of evenly matched the first half. And the second half, it was as if we were playing a completely different team, because we obliterated them in the second half. It was 24-7.
Yeah, exactly. Like that first half was like, please don't let this happen again. Please, please, please. But glad we got that halftime talk.
Yeah. Well, their offense never really gained much momentum to begin with. They were beating us with the ground game, but their pass game was non-existent. Their quarterback actually had over double as many run yards as he did pass yards, which there's not a lot of guys that can say that. But during the second half, Iowa State was only stopped once, and it was on that Carson Hansen fumble. They didn't force us to punt the entire second half. And then you have your highlight of the game, which is late in the fourth quarter. You got that Rocco Becht 15-yard touchdown run. That made it a 2-possession game that essentially iced it. And then we ended up getting another touchdown after that. But what I think was the bigger one, what I think was the more important touchdown, was not Rocco's 15-yarder, but that 26-yard pass to Steve O'Klotz early in the second half that broke the game open. Because we went into halftime on a Kyle Conradi field goal. We had a little bit of momentum. The offense was moving the ball. We come back out of the half, and we score right away. We get that touchdown. We go into the locker room with momentum. We come out of the locker room with momentum. And from there, it was all Iowa State.
Yeah, that's just the mindset that we need. Like going into the second half. So that's kind of what's helped us like be named as a second half team.
Right. Well, the thing is, at some point in the game, we're going to get momentum and not give it up. So the point for other teams, what they have to do in order to beat us, is to establish a big enough cushion early that we can't come back from. And that's a really hard thing to ask teams to do, to dominate a team so badly in the first half that they just can't come back. Because they're going to play better than you in the second half. And even in the games that we've lost, we did play better in the second half. But that was definitely a thing where, again, we didn't even punt in the second half against Cincinnati. Our offense is nothing to be concerned about. As time goes on, we're relying on that pass game more and more. We're relying on the run game less and less, and it has been an effective strategy change. Our ground game is not really there right now. Abu Sama is not everything that he was marketed to be. Carson Hansen and Jalen Jackson are not, RB1s. Rocco Becht, on the other hand, though, is a QB1, and he's playing like a QB1.
Exactly. He's been making a name for himself. And like you said before, like I can't remember when, but you said something about like Abu Usama, being a defensive magnet is like if I'm getting that
Yes.
correctly.
Yeah, he does attract a lot of attention because of how he played at the end of last season, when he did establish himself, in that RB1 spot. But this year it hasn't been there, and part of that too is because of the failures of the offensive line when run blocking, not giving our guys the viable holes in order to generate a good ground game.
Yeah, I don't know why it has to be every first down that we make a play on. You've noticed this too.
Oh yeah, everybody in Cyclone Nation has noticed this. We don't try to utilize play action on first down pretty much ever. On the rare occasion that we actually pass on first down, it's just a straight pass. There's no play action. We could be baiting defenses, and having some effect of that, because when you have to make them still respect the pass when they see handoff, that's what opens up your handoff to begin with. You have to balance both. You can't establish the run without doing a little bit of play action, because otherwise the defense sees handoff, and then all 11 guys are just going to run at the ball, because they have no reason to second guess it. So, Campbell, Mauser, yeah, they like to establish the run game. If you want to establish the run game, do more play action. Keep the defense honest. Make them second guess themselves. But even without that, Rocco was 24 for 33 for 234 yards and a touchdown. That's nothing to complain about. And then he was also able to stack up 48 rush yards of his own on 7 carries. He's leading this team and making his minutes count. When the pressure's on, Rocco is not cracking. And you know what else wasn't cracking against Cincinnati? Our third down defense. Since he was 3 for 11 on third down. That ain't much.
It's really not.
That's the kind of stops that we need to be seeing more often. Now, 3 for 11 is a really good day from the defense. There's probably going to be some regression to the mean that happens in that Utah game. But even with that, our rush defense is still a pretty glaring problem. We allowed 287 total rush yards in this game. Their RB1, Corey Kiner, he rushed for 120 yards on 18 carries. Oh, and he wasn't even their leading carrier. 120 yards on 18 carries, and he wasn't their leading carrier. You know who was their leading carrier? Brendan Sorsby. 14 rushes, 141 yards. Sorsby averaged over 10 yards a rush. Unacceptable.
I know.
At that point, if he's going to be rushing that times, he actually, he rushed the ball more times than he completed passes. Why are we not spying him?
I know. Is this something we could fix for tomorrow?
It better be. Now, granted, I don't think a running quarterback is a particularly large threat for tomorrow. I don't trust Utah's offense as far as I can throw them. And Brant Keith's a pretty big guy, and I probably can't throw him pretty far. So, but our rush defense, while they might be able to find some success against Utah, who doesn't have a potent rushing attack, our defense is not sustainable against potent rushing attacks. That's why Texas Tech was able to beat us. That's why Kansas was able to beat us. They do have strong ground games. But we do a good job making defenses one-dimensional with the pass defense, and it's unfortunate that it ends up not really mattering all that much. The only team in the Big 12 with a worse rush defense than us is Oklahoma State.
And where are they at?
They allow 240 rush yards a game. 240. That's not a high bar to clear. That's a very low bar. Granted, to allow 240 yards a game, you almost have to be trying to allow that many a game. I don't know what Oklahoma State is doing with their defensive front seven down there. That's bizarre. Their defensive line and their linebackers are probably making Mike Gundy cry. But yeah, thankfully, our pass defense is still a brick wall. It's the polar opposite of our rush defense, which means it is the best in the Big 12. We lead the Big 12 in pass yards per game allowed. We only allowed 66 pass yards for Cincinnati, 10 completions on 18 attempts. Yeah, how about that? Rocco had 6 more completions than Cincy had attempts.
Like you said, that's our QB1.
That's a stark difference in pass game right there. Iowa State can sling the rock. Cincy obviously cannot. 10 completions in a game is pitiful. And when you only have 10 completions and you're only getting 3.7 yards per dropback, that's a rough day. That's a real rough day. I would hate to be a wide receiver on that team right now. But it goes to show the difference in the skill and experience between our linebackers and our secondary. Our secondary, Blake, we're healthy and we're elite. You know, Coop back there, Porter, Jontez Williams. I'll take those guys any day of the week.
Yeah, I'm not worried about those.
There's no reason at all to be concerned about them. Yeah, they looked a little bit lost during the Kansas game. That was a one-off thing. You have a bad game every now and then. These guys are still the best secondary in the Big 12, and it's not particularly close. If we had a solid linebacking core, our defense would be blowing the rest of the defenses in the Big 12s out of the water, including BYU. BYU's defense isn't that much better than us in terms of total defense, but they're also a lot healthier and they're more well-balanced. Our run defense has been gashed multiple times over. UCF did it, Texas Tech did it, Cincinnati's done it, Kansas did it. But the trend between them is that even when they're gashing our run defense, that still doesn't mean they can win against us. Or it doesn't mean that they will win. It means they can win. It doesn't mean that they will win against us. Teams that have gashed our run defense are still only 2-2 against us. And if you haven't gashed our run defense, well, you're winless. But yeah, the linebackers, same story. We've been harping at this since week 1 when Caleb Bacon got injured. Injuries hurt. And right now, not having that, solid Mike linebacker, it makes you long for the days of having, Joel Lanning and Marcel Spears or Mike Rose and Orion Vance, as your field general, patrolling the gridiron and not letting running backs go anywhere. Because, John Haycock pretty much pioneered playing good run defense out of a 3-3-5 set, but he had the guys to do it. You got to have the guys to do it in order to pull that off successfully. Right now, we don't have that. We don't have those guys. We don't have Lanning. We don't have Spears. We don't have Rose. We don't have Vance. We could use them, but we don't got them. So we got to do what we can without them. But thankfully, our secondary is second to none in the Big 12. Speaking of the Big 12, we are fighting for a Big 12 championship, but we need help to get there. Blake, there are 3 scenarios where we get in, or I guess 4 technically.
Granted, we have to win out.
We do have to win out in all of these scenarios. Yeah, there's technically 4 scenarios which we get in. I actually only wrote down 3 of them in our notes here because the 4th one is so absurdly unlikely that it wasn't really worth mentioning. Maybe I'll mention it anyway. We'll see. But yes, in all of these we have to win out. But in situation 1 here, Arizona State and BYU would each have to lose 1 game. That would create an Iowa State versus Colorado title game. In situation 2, BYU and Colorado each have to lose 1 game. That would create an Iowa State versus Arizona State title game. And our third situation is where Arizona State and Colorado each lose 1 game, and that would create an Iowa State versus BYU title game. Now, the interesting piece of this is the remaining schedules for each of these teams. This weekend, Arizona State and BYU have to play each other. So one of those teams is going to be taking a loss here. So two of these paths here are going to immediately get put into motion. And the fourth path is if all three of the other teams in contention were to lose a game. But I think that'd be kind of ridiculous if all three of them went 1-1 in the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, honestly.
So I don't think that's really worth mentioning, and I don't even know who that would pair us up against in the title game.
Me neither. I feel like our likely scenarios, if we were to get to Big 12 championship, BYU and Colorado. Because let me think. If Colorado were to lose one game, obviously it would be Kansas.
I think the least likely of the scenarios here is where Arizona State and BYU each lose one game.
I would agree with that.
Because BYU and Arizona State's rivalry week competitions, I don't see them. I don't see either one of those resulting in a loss for Arizona State or for BYU. I don't think Arizona is going to be Arizona State. Arizona State has proven to be unequivocally better than Arizona this year, which is kind of unfortunate because Arizona's got roster pieces to do some stuff with, and maybe they do pull out an upset. But if I was going to choose a team to win that game, 10 times, I'm taking Arizona State. As for BYU in the final week of the season, they play Houston, so BYU is going to win. Colorado's schedule, also a little bit interesting here. They play a scorching hot Kansas team this weekend. And if we were talking about this game 2 weeks ago, I would not have told you that Colorado has a chance at losing this game. But Kansas is playing some ball right now. You cannot count this Jayhawks team. I mean, they went and knocked off the two teams that were sitting on top of the Big 12 in consecutive weeks. That's no slouch of a program to do that.
That's almost impossible.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have the schedule line up to do it for one thing, but to actually be able to pull it off when that happens, that's nuts.
They're one of those teams where their record doesn't.
Oh no, but that's because they've lost so many of their games in crunch time.
Yeah,
where they haven't been able to squeeze it out at the end. But yeah, Kansas is definitely playing better than their record, and I think they are a danger to Colorado. And I would not be shocked at all if the Jayhawks are able to pull out a win against the Buffs. Am I guaranteeing that by any means? No. I would still take the Buffs 6 times out of 10, but that's only 6 out of 10. That's not that impressive. Meanwhile, Arizona State against Arizona, I'm taking Arizona State 8 of those times. BYU against Houston, out of 10 times, I think BYU might win 11 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Houston's bad.
BYU wins 10 times.
Houston's bad. But before we can get too concerned about the chaos around the conference, we got our own business to take care of because we do still have to win out if we want to make it to Dallas. And that requires tomorrow getting a win in Rice-Eccles Stadium in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. And the Utah defense is one of the best that Iowa State has played all season. They actually have a better total defense than the team out east. Now, they do not have a better scoring defense than the team out east. There's a significant disparity here. And let me tell you what that means here. Their scoring defense and total defense not lining up is indicative of a field position problem for Utah. Our special teams' success is priming us for winning the field position game. We average, when we return a kickoff, which isn't that often, it's actually less than once per game, 22-yard return. That's not too bad when you're, returning it from outside the end zone anyway. No, that's not too shabby. But we have the second best punt return numbers in the conference. Jalen Knoll's doing a fantastic job of that this year. He's actually not running the ball backwards for once, like he had been in years past. Dude turned into a dog on special teams. But that's the kind of thing that's going to set us up for success. If Jalen Knoll is getting us good field position on punts, yeah, we're not going to have to go down long fields because that's where Utah predicates their defense, is forcing you to go down a long field. They want to force you into making long drives because they'll eventually be able to stop you. But on short drives, they might not be able to do that soon enough. And that's Utah's big weakness on the defense, is they lose the field position game is when they lose points. Flip side of the coin, like, Utah's offense is nothing to write home about, which is to be expected because the team was built around an 87-year-old Cam Rising, and he's not going to play.
87-year-old.
Maybe 88.
Oh, baby.
Maybe. I could just round up to 90.
Yeah, might as well.
At that rate, might as well just round up to 100. 100-year-old Cam Rising. But he's not going to be playing because he's injured, because that's what happens when you're an old man. Instead, Isaac Wilson will be getting the start, and he has not been an effective replacement at all. He has struggled to utilize Utah's best weapon on their offense, Brant Kuithe. Cam Rising never really struggled to utilize Kuithe. Isaac Wilson has had problems doing that every single time. And like I said, Kuithe is their best skill player. He's better than any of their wide receivers. If they can't get those numbers to Kuithe, they're not getting them to their wide receivers either. And then Utah's run defense is one of the worst in the league. They have the worst run defense. Sorry. This is going to be a stress release for our run defense. The Utes have one of the worst run offenses in our conference schedule. The only teams in our conference that they're ahead of in terms of run offense are not on our schedule. They're ahead of Oklahoma State, TCU, and Colorado. We don't play those teams. So Utah they have a bad run game. So
they're going to have like one of the worst run games in our upcoming schedule.
Yeah. They just have one of the worst run games on our schedule, period. They don't have much. I couldn't even tell you the name of their running back right now. But that might be a bit of a break for our linebackers, who could use a break pretty badly after getting gashed by Cincinnati, and before that getting gashed by Kansas, and before that getting gashed by Texas Tech, and before that getting gashed by UCF. So, yeah, cut them a little slack here. It's about that time of the season. We were not expecting an easy game against Utah. And I still wouldn't call this an easy game. Playing in Rice-Eccles is no easy place to play.
Oh, I know.
But, we were also projecting at the start of the season that Utah was going to be like the 7th ranked team in the country. And, well, they're bad.
Yeah,
they're really bad.
How long did that last?
They are one of the worst teams in the Big 12. It's Utah's down there with, Oklahoma State and Houston. And then there's a pretty big gap between them and everybody else. So the spread on this game: Iowa State -6.5, over under 41.5. Vegas seems to be expecting a defensive battle in this one. I don't think that they're giving Iowa State's offense enough respect. I think Rocco deserves more credit than Vegas is willing to give right now. Give me Iowa State -6.5. I'll take the over 41.5. And then give me a final score of ISU 27, Utah 20.
Not to sound cliche, but my prediction is very close to you. We score one less touchdown, but a field goal. So I have ISU winning 24-20. Obviously not.
So you got Utah covering then?
Yeah, obviously not covering. Utah's covering, and then we hit the over, obviously.
Yeah, Utah scores around that 20-point mark a lot. I think that's a fair mark to put them at. Our average score is actually above 30, but considering Utah's defense is a little bit better than the ones we've been playing for the rest of the season, I think it's fair to knock our projected score down a few points. That 24 to 27 range is probably a pretty solid guess. The other fall sport going on right now, Cyclone volleyball. They ended their losing streak that lasted almost a month last Saturday. They swept Texas Tech in Lubbock.
Yeah, great morale booster for our team. But with this win, we did see that Christy Johnson Lynch ties with former Nebraska head coach John Cook for third most wins in Big 12 history.
Yeah, y'all remember that? Nebraska used to be in the Big 12.
Oh, yeah.
Back when we were like 10.
We also beat Nebraska in 2012.
That we did. But sweeping Texas Tech. Why haven't we played like this all season?
Matt,
Seriously.
Texas Tech sucks.
They're supposed to be a better team than us. Now, if we had actually had, our entire roster available the entire this year, then I might not be saying that sentence. But nonetheless, we played way better against Texas Tech than we have against anybody else in conference play, other than Texas Tech when they were at Hilton. We hit 307 across the match, 448 in set one. That's staggering. Lily Wachholtz, 12 kills on 233 hitting. Faith Durrani, 12 kills on 280 hitting. Decent numbers, nothing particularly spectacular there. Granted, if you have a game go to more sets, you're going to rack up more kills. So that's pretty good for 3 sets. But from the middle, we couldn't miss. Tierney Jackson and Amiri Hendricks Walker hit 444 and 417 respectively. Tierney didn't have a single error.
That's great.
We need more error avoidance like that. Because our error numbers they're too high for almost every single one of our games, and we'll get into that against Arizona State here in a minute. But as nice as hitting better is, the defense was way more present in this game. Our serve receive was actually good. Believe it or not, we actually had solid serve receive. We only allowed 1 ace the entire game, when I'm getting accustomed to allowing, 7. Meanwhile, we actually put up 8 of our own in this game. And we actually pretty much just outright dominated the box score in this one. 60 to 42 points, 49-37 kills, 44-35 assists. Great marks for Iowa State in this game. And any momentum that we thought we may have acquired as a result of that game was incredibly short-lived because we got bulldozed in Tempe at Mullet Arena by the Sun Devils.
By the number 9 team in the country.
Yeah, they are the number 9 team in the country. But if you thought we learned how to consistently hit better from the Texas Tech game, you're wrong. We didn't figure that out. We happened to have a fluke game that we played good against Texas Tech because we regressed to hitting 142 on the night at Arizona State. That's a bad hitting night against the best teams in the country. That's a bad hitting night against anybody. It doesn't matter how good the defense you're against is. Now, like I said, Arizona State is the best volleyball team in the Big 12. Now, there might be a few stray Jayhawks fans that want to dispute that, but they did beat the Jayhawks. We'll see if any Jayhawk burners come after me on Twitter later for this one. Or we'll see. Actually, there'll probably be some Utah burners that come after me on Twitter for saying that Iowa State's going to beat Utah in Rice Eccles. Probably going to have Pig Bus in my DMs now. But Arizona State on the volleyball court, not only did they beat the Jayhawks earlier this year, they beat the brakes off of us last night. It was not pretty. Not only did they win in a sweep, they nearly swept the box score. The only part of the box score that we did better in was digs, and we beat them by 1 dig. It was 61-60. So essentially neutral there. And Blake, we still can't close out sets. I'm like a broken record. I say this every week. We got to close out sets. We got to finish. We got to hit better. It's the same problems every time.
We just can't let them go on runs. It's like that's a problem.
We had the lead.
We've let teams have.
We had the lead late in set 1, and we gave up a 6-1 run and blew the lead, and we lost the set because of it. Arizona State carries all that momentum into the second set, and from there, we got absolutely shelled. That second set went 25-15. We only hit .045. Yeah, .045, not .45, .045. In set 2. Only 7 kills in set 2 to 5 errors. So we almost gave them as many points as we scored ourselves. And then set 3 was pretty much somewhere in the middle of those 2 sets in terms of performance. It was ugly. But the road trip continues right now in the state of Arizona. They go from Tempe to Tucson, or actually they're probably already in Tucson. They'll play Arizona tomorrow. Arizona started conference play out really, really slow. They started conference play out 2-9, and now they're 6-9. They're on a 4-game win streak. They're actually undefeated outside of conference play. They're definitely positioned well to make the NCAA tournament, even though they haven't looked fantastic in Big 12 play. We actually played Arizona last year. We beat them in the Grand Canyon tournament, and our team was more or less the same. Other than, we don't have Jordan Hopp and Alexis Engelbrecht at the middle blocker position anymore. And also Nayeli and Pam and Maya were at full capacity in that game. And they're not. They're not right now. So I'm not too worried about the middle blocker spot being different. We're not really lacking anything there. Amiri Hendricks Walker and Tierney Jackson are doing a fantastic job there. Nothing to complain about that.
They've done great.
Nothing to complain about there. On the flip side of the spectrum, we need Maya and Nayeli back. And we're not going to – Maya played some against Arizona State, so she's probably getting closer to being back at 100%. But we're not going to see Nayeli on the court again until next year. And without that hitting power, we don't have the same kind of hitting power without them. We don't have the same kind of hitting accuracy without them. They're very dynamic. They're effective. They gave other teams all kinds of problems. And without them, we're not giving teams the same kinds of problems that we otherwise would be. But nonetheless, that game at Arizona is tomorrow at 3 p.m. That'll be on ESPN+. So, you can watch that before you tune into the wrestling duel, which we'll get into here later. And then also next week, we play at home against number 19 ranked Utah. That'll be the beginning of the last week of the volleyball season. Utah's kind of been the surprise of the conference this year. I don't know if anybody really expected them to be ranked.
Because what were they before the season?
They were unranked.
Well, unranked, but conference standings.
Well, before the season, everybody's 0-0 in the conference standings.
I meant like the preseason.
That I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
But they're a well-rounded team. They're toward the top of the conference in most metrics, both offensive and defensive. They're not the top of the conference in anything, but they're in that 2 through 5 range in pretty much every stat. And what that means is they don't really have a true weakness to be exploited as a team. And that's going to put our team in a very difficult position. That game will be Wednesday, 5 o'clock in Hilton Coliseum. So be there. Or if you're like watching this from another state or something, then I guess you have an excuse to watch it on ESPN+. But be at the game, support our team, And while you're supporting our team, maybe also keep an eye on men's basketball, who's going to be in Maui.
Freaking Maui. We're going to Hawaii.
We are going to Hawaii. Before that Hawaii trip, though, earlier this week, we played Indiana University, Indianapolis.
A lot went on with this game, other than us beating the tar out of them. First of all, I'll get to
Technical foul in the first 30 seconds of the game against their coach.
Yeah, seriously, we'll get to that in a second.
He should have been ejected.
I know. Curtis Jones led the Cyclones 20 points, while 3 others scored in double digits. Those were Taman Lipsey, Joshua Jefferson, Keyshawn Gilbert. This is another instance where they waste no time with gaining the lead at the starts. They led 17-5 at the beginning of the first media timeouts. But let's get to that. Paul Corsaro, if that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
Clocked in one of the fastest tees I've ever seen in a basketball game.
And it was what happened later in the game that ended up being their memorable thing. I don't even remember what it was that he got teed up for.
Yeah, me neither. Like with the technical foul, I guess he just said a few words and just
that's probably what it was. It's probably something he said.
Yeah.
But it's what happened later in the game that should have got him ejected, and he didn't even so much as get a warning. Or I shouldn't say he didn't get a warning for it. He definitely got a warning for it. But there was no real consequences for it. Later in the game, one of the referees went down on the court, hit the back of his head on the floor, was out cold.
Yeah, this happened as one of the Indianapolis players was going for a loose ball and collided with the official, Ray Natili.
Yeah.
Ray Natili, and then he fell backwards on his head.
Hit the back of his head hard on the hardwood. And yeah, he was unconscious. He was not moving. He was out stone cold.
Yeah, at that point, I was looking over from where I was.
And so naturally, of course, Iowa State's trainers rush over to help. The other refs run over to help. And while the other refs are running over to help, that's when Paul Corsaro starts whining to the refs about wanting a foul call out of it. I'm sorry. That is the wrong time to be doing that. I mean, have you no sense at all? That's bad. And I mean, I do some officiating for youth sports, right? If I got an injury like that, if one of my other officials or a coach or a kid is out cold, and someone and another team's coach comes up and starts complaining to me about some call, I'm not tolerating that. He's ejected. You absolutely cannot put up with that. That's a horrible, horrible culture to be fostering. I cannot believe Corsaro did not get ejected for that, especially after he'd already been given a technical once.
I personally don't even want to imagine the consequences if this was a Big 12 coach, because I don't even think Jerome Tang would have even gotten on this level.
Oh, no, that's even Jerome Tang is above this. I mean, that's the thing. I've been in the officials' shoes.
Yeah, you have.
I've been in the officials' shoes before. I've done this. I've been there, done that. If a coach starts complaining to me while there is an injury timeout on the floor, that coach is gone. I don't care if I've had to address anything before with him. He's ejected. That's absolutely not tolerable.
It's just so insecure. Just zero excuse for that.
Absolutely pathetic behavior from Coach Corsaro.
But he was able to get up on his feet. The medics were prepared to push him off the court, but he was able to get up on his feet. He was helped off
by the
trainers, and he was exited with a standing ovation from the crowd. So
yeah.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah, Ott said he had a headache after the game. I'd kind of shocked if there wasn't a concussion. I don't know if he got screened or not. I never heard anything about that.
But Natili, he's like he's got a big name in the being a basketball referee. He's a Final Four.
He's one of the more well-renowned refs.
Yes, he's a Final Four ref, like considered one of the best in the Big 12. And with good news, he was reportedly back on the court reffing a UNI men's basketball game this past week. So all good signs so far.
Yep. Yep. That's pretty much all the updates we have on Natili. Needless to say, we ended up winning the game because IUI is one of the worst teams in the country. Yada yada yada. Maui. Hawaii.
We're going to Hawaii. Why didn't we go to Hawaii for Thanksgiving break?
Because I don't have that much money.
We're broke college students.
But nonetheless, this is one of the biggest matchups that the Maui Invitational's ever seen. It's the first, I guess you have the written first top 10 first-round matchup. It's actually the first top 5 as well in the first round. And it is against that 4th-ranked Auburn team that is pretty darn good that already beat Houston this year.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the only teams the battle tested against. But I do want to point out we just got a lockdown on Johni Broome.
Johni Broome.
Johni Broome. You know Auburn.
Yeah. That matchup is an interesting one because while Johni Broome individually is certainly better than any of our bigs, he is more talented than Deshaun Jackson. He is more talented than Joshua Jefferson. That said, we have more depth. Broome is going to get tired at some point in the game, and Auburn does not have the depth that they have had in the past couple years because they don't have Dylan Cardwell anymore. So we can wear him out. We're going to take advantage of the time that he's not on the court and go on runs. That's going to be huge. And we also need to keep an eye out for Aden Holloway. Aden Holloway can shoot. Aden Holloway can dish the ball. He is dangerous. And he is a guy that he can take the ball to the bucket. He can put it up from behind the arc. He can make points happen on his own line if he needs to, or he can put points on his other players' stat lines. He is the kind of guy that makes an entire team better. And when I say entire team, I mean not just the other players, but himself too. Because he gets them going, and it takes attention off of him, and then he heats up even more. Yep. Aden Holloway is a tough player to deal with.
If you guys remember, Matt was part of the Auburn fandom for a long
changed.
time.
We don't need to get into that. We're not doing that no more. We win this game, actually, regardless of whether or not we win or lose this game. Our next matchup will either be against the 10th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels or the Dayton Flyers. Neither of those teams is any slouch either. Dayton's been carrying the A10 for a while. North Carolina is North Carolina. If we lose, we'll get the loser. If we win, we'll get the winner. It's not going to be an easy matchup either way. And if we have to go, from playing Auburn to playing North Carolina back to back, and then whoever we end up getting in the championship game, that's a difficult week.
Nah, Maui.
But that's what Maui is.
That's literally what Maui is.
That's what Maui is. That's what Maui was always meant to be.
Mm-hmm. And most of these,
but you know what? It's the same situation for the other. It's the same situation for the other teams in Maui too, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard for all of them. It's not just hard for us. So we can't let that weigh us down. We're put in the same circumstances as everybody else there.
This Maui trip, if you recall, opens up the possibility of another Tyrese Hunter matchup
because Memphis is playing down there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an interesting one. Would love to beat the brakes off of him one more time.
I'd love to do it on a neutral court stage.
Yeah. Speaking of teams that I would very much like to beat the brakes off of right now in a basketball game, how about that UNI women's basketball team?
Oh, boy.
Fire away.
Okay. Yep. First road test ends in atrocity, obviously, as this was the eruption across the states. For the entirety of the game, everything was just going right for UNI. And I'll quote wide right, natty light, every shot, bounce, call, roll. literally everything.
Some days you're just lucky.
Exactly. As Maya McDermott was, she had the game of her life, like on her home court, scoring 37 on Wednesday and was 66.7% from the field. She put up some of the most random shots, and they all went in.
Some days you're just lucky.
It's just that much lucky.
Maybe she had an ace card in her sock or something. I don't know.
Possibly. Last time,
Ate Fruit Loops before the game or something. I don't know.
Bill Fenley said,
whatever you do to give yourself good luck.
What else would she have done?
I don't know. That's just the weird superstitions.
Wheaties?
Fruit Loops before the game? Nah, not Wheaties. That's not a superstition. Fruit Loops is a superstition. Lucky Charms is too obvious. Yeah, the ace in the sock, that's one.
What else?
I guess this one's not really for basketball. I was going to say, like, when you're fishing, you got to bring a can of Pringles. But either way, rough game for Iowa State when nothing goes your way on that defensive side of the ball. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. And, like, you just deal with that loud McLeod Center.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it almost feels no different than Hilton at that point. But
when they get rowdy, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that metal roof at the McLeod Center, it bounces sound right back down at you.
Mm-hmm. But I will say Bill Fenley had some words in the post game. He said both teams had opportunities to make big shots. They made them. We didn't. But the real dagger was the Panthers going on a 13-0 run in the third quarter. We were scoreless for, I think, over 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can't win games that way.
That can't happen.
Can't win games that way.
Especially when you have, like, these standout sophomores, like, on our team.
Yeah, and lack of experience ended up being part of what cooked us in that game because when you have experience, you don't run into this kind of stuff as often. Addie Brown and Audie Crooks, still both put together double-doubles. Audie had 22 points, 10 rebounds. Addie, 21 points, 12 rebounds. Wasn't enough, though, to carry the team.
Yeah. Bill Fenley did also acknowledge in the postgame, like, obviously, these in-state games are hard. We all know this. But he said that's why the men don't play them.
I think that a comment like that's in poor taste.
I know.
That's in really poor taste.
I agree with that because like when that was brought up to TJ Otzelberger the other day, he said like he doesn't really pay attention to like what the fans want like with their non-con schedule. They're focused on what the team needs like to build on in their non-conference slate.
Right.
And obviously that was the right answer for that.
Right. Yeah, the in-state games are definitely fan service. But again, that comment from Bill about him essentially taking a shot at Otzelberger, saying you're not willing to play tough opponents, while we're preparing to potentially play 2 consecutive top 10 teams in a row. Come on. I mean, that's one thing to say. I mean, that's in bad taste to say that, but it's even worse to say it when it's not true. You can't because that whole statement is built on the premise that we avoid hard games. No, we don't. The premise is wrong.
Yeah, and literally with these first 3 games with men's basketball, that's meant to like build our team like to get them used to like a D1 college basketball atmosphere.
I don't know if I'd say that because the atmosphere in those, games against IUPUI or Mississippi Valley State or Indiana State, that's not really fostering a true D1 environment because you don't have that rowdy crowd like you do when we get to Big 12 play.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one though.
So I don't know that. I don't think I agree with that assessment. But making excuses that the in-state games are hard, when you're playing UNI, a team that you should be beating pretty handily. I think that Fenn actually has his focus in the wrong place right now. And it needs to get back in place because he's got another in-state rival coming up next year.
Next on Sunday.
Yeah, on Sunday. We host Drake.
And this will be our last chance to make a statement before heading to Fort Myers to face number 1.
Carolina.
Yeah. But Drake does come into this game with 2 losses against Creighton as well as the team out east.
They got obliterated by the team out east.
Yeah.
I didn't see their score against Creighton.
I guess.
Creighton's got a solid team though too. Yeah, we need to lock down Dinnebier and Miller on defense.
Yeah, because as they're the ones that contribute the most for Drake.
Right, they definitely contribute the most. Drake's defense is not the greatest on earth. It's not the worst on earth either, but it could certainly be better.
Where we found ourselves struggling last year, like we need to have the momentum this year.
Yes.
Like, and we'll have it on the home court too.
Yeah. But that game, that'll be Sunday at 2:00 in Hilton Coliseum. It'll also be on ESPN Plus, but don't watch it there. Watch it at Hilton Coliseum. Be there for the environment. It's much better.
You guys are getting off for Thanksgiving, so y'all really have no excuse.
And then that Fort Myers tip-off against Carolina.
Of course, they'll have the highest expectations for this one, but this is one of the games that gives us a strong non-con slate. That with UConn.
Strong non-con slate is only worth something if you win your games. It's not worth losing to good opponents. Doesn't build your resume at all. It just doesn't hurt it as much. But yeah, it's a good neutral court matchup. It sees how we're going to gauge ourselves against a team that's probably the best in the country. I don't think we're going to win it, though.
Not me neither.
The team that just lost to UNI is going to beat Carolina. Give me a break.
I know.
No, it's not going to happen. Carolina has played better competition than our women's team has and has beat them. I see no reason not to think that Carolina is going to win that game.
No.
All right. The pinnacle of the week. Tomorrow night. On the mat. Against the team out east.
In the hostile
Carver. In the Forbidden City. Cyhawk Wrestling. Iowa State coming off a W versus Navy, where Adrian Meza picked up his first win in a D1 match. Then he went and proceeded to go win 6 bouts at the Grandview Open. At 141, Zach Redding held his own against a top 10 ranked wrestler. Ended up losing the bout by riding time, but wrestled well. At 184, Evan Bachman won the only ranked matchup of the night in an 8-3 decision against 30th ranked Daniel Williams. And heavyweight Daniel Herrera won by his second consecutive tech fall in the absence of Younger Bastida. Now, the matchups for tomorrow night. At 125, Blake, we're looking at the listed projected matchup for this one is Adrian Meza or Kyson Tarakina or Osmani Diversant versus 27th ranked Cale Peterson or Joey Cruz. I have this one chalked as an L, but I don't know who's going to wrestle for us. If Osmani Diversant wrestles for us, I think that one's an L. I don't think he's going to beat either Peterson or Cruz. Meza, I don't really know what to think of quite yet. But considering he is just a freshman, I'm not on the train yet. If I'm Dresser right now, it's going to depend on what I'm seeing in practice. Maybe they're doing a wrestle off in practice or something like that. But I would certainly be inclined right now as an outsider to go with Kyson Tarakina because he's experienced. He's wrestled in that environment before.
Has Kyson Tarakina been healthy this year?
He has been nursing some stuff in the off season. I would think he's back to being at full health by now. But nonetheless, in an environment like that, I want to go with somewhere who's been there, done that. So Kyson Terrakina would be my go-to, but that might not be Dresser's go-to, and it might depend on who's wrestling better in practice, and that very well may be Meza. 133, 5th ranked Evan Frost versus 9th ranked Drake Ayala. This is going to be one of the better bouts of the night. It's one of the highest ranked bouts of the night. I have this one listed as a win for Evan Frost. I think he's going to beat Ayala. At 141 pounds, Blake, I mentioned him before, held his own against a top 10 guy, Zach Redding. There's also the possibility that Jacob Frost gets the start here. He's listed. I don't think Jacob Frost is going to get the start. It's going to be Zach Redding against 31st ranked Ryder Block. Now, Redding might have wrestled really well against a top 10 guy last week against Navy. Transitive property does not apply in wrestling. I have this one listed as an L for Redding. He's not beating those ranked guys until he proves that he can do it. Yes, just because he held his own against a top-ranked guy doesn't mean that he's going to beat a guy who is, ranked lower on the totem pole right now. So I have that one chalked up as an L. At 149 pounds, this one's another major one. Another bout between top 10 wrestlers here. 7th ranked, Anthony Echemendia. 4th ranked, Kyle Parko. Curious to see what you're thinking of for this one, Blake.
First of all, say what you got.
I've got Echemendia winning this in an upset.
I literally have this as a toss-up. I think this is too close to call.
I think Echemendia is a bit underrated, and I think that happened because of that Cyhawk duel last year where – or no, that wasn't Echemendia's bout, was it?
I can't remember who it was, but I know y'all.
Chittum beat Franek. And then was it – oh, it was Echemendia that had that bout against Real Woods. And I will die on the hill that Echemendia got that takedown at the end and beat Woods.
That bout.
Yeah, Chittum and Echemendia, they both won those bouts. I'll die on that hill. The scoring might not reflect it in the history books, but you watch the video, they got those takedowns. So give me Anthony Echemendia over Kyle Parko.
Yeah, Echemendia is more than capable for this.
Yeah. 157. This one will be an interesting one. 10th ranked Paniro Johnson, who has beat number 1 ranked wrestlers before, against number 1 ranked Ja'Cory Teemer. I have this one chalked up as an L. I think Teemer's a better wrestler than any of the other guys Paniro's beat. 165. MJ Gaitan or Connor Oten versus 2nd ranked Michael Caliendo. If we wrestle Oten, we're losing this. And considering how good Caliendo is, I think it's a fair bet that Dresser tries to save Gaitan the loss and he just wrestles Oten. But if we want any chance at winning this, Gaitan is the way to go. Because Gaitan is a pinner. And as time has gone on, he's gotten better at it. He's also cut down on weight as well. So he's leaner than he has been before, and that might be part of the factor why he's ranked higher. But Gaitan is in a good spot, and maybe he doesn't, win this more than half of the time. I don't think he does. I don't think there's any way he wins it more than 5 out of 10 times.
No.
But because he's a pinner, that creates trouble for top-ranked guys. Because he's a more aggressive and less tactical than what they're used to dealing with. He's going to try stuff that those top-ranked guys don't usually try.
Now, I hope we don't get Oten for this one.
So I think if Gaitan wrestles, I think there's still a fairly good chance he loses the bout, but I don't think Uten can win it. We'll go to 174 here. This one's an L. Aiden Riggins versus either 10th ranked Nelson Brands or Patrick Kennedy. I don't think it matters who Riggins wrestles against. I think Riggins loses. Nelson Brands is too darn good. I think that's an easy win for Brands. That one I'd be very concerned about bonus points. Patrick Kennedy, I still think Riggins loses too. Maybe that one's a little bit closer, but I do not see any way the Cyclones get a win at 174. 184. This is another one. Definitely worth keeping your eyes on. 15th ranked Evan Bachman and 7th ranked Gabe Arnold. I think Evan Bachman is sorely underrated. He's got way better coaching now than he did at Utah Valley. He was about 18th ranked, somewhere in that neighborhood at Utah Valley. I think under Dresser, he's a much better wrestler. I think Bachman probably should be a top 10 wrestler. And I think he's going to prove that as the year goes on. I have Bachman beating Gabe Arnold. You concur with me on that one, Blake?
Absolutely.
All right. 197. 20th ranked, Christian Carroll. 2nd ranked, Stephen Buchanan. I like Christian Carroll, but he's not beating Stephen Buchanan.
No.
That's not happening. I don't think that one's going to be remotely close. Stephen Buchanan probably gets bonus points in that one. At 285, we might be seeing the return of Younger Bastida, or if not, we got Daniel Herrera versus 13th ranked Ben Keeter. If Bastida is back,
I was just gonna say, like, if
Bastida is back, and I think that he's been resting long enough that he's probably healthy enough to be on the mat again. So I'm kind of anticipating, this would be a heck of a triumphant return for Bastida to come back from your injury that held him out of the All-Star Classic, and to go in Cyhawk and go and beat Ben Keeter. Give me the narrative. Give me the win at heavyweight. Younger Bastida over Ben Keeter. Which means I've got us winning 4 out of 6 bouts. This is where it'd be really nice to have Casey Swiderski back. Because if we got Casey Swiderski wrestling at 141, then I easily have us beating Ryder Block. Probably with bonus points. And then we're looking at splitting bouts 50-50, and then it just comes down to bonus points. And at that point, I don't know who wins it. But without Swiderski in, I think that makes a huge difference. We're going to have to get some manner of bonus points in order to pull this one off. And the only way you're going to be able to find it out in real time, you're going to have to watch it on Big Ten Plus tomorrow night. They're actually creating a special pay-per-view specifically for this duel because it is a big enough event for it. So, you don't need to pay a monthly or a yearly subscription for the service in order to actually watch this duel. It's going to be tomorrow, 6 p.m. on Big Ten Plus. Tune into that. It's going to be good.
We need to break this 20-year skid.
We need to break this 20-year skid bad. But before we break that 20-year skid tomorrow night, make sure you give the Cornfield Sports Pod a follow on Twitter at CSportsPod. Blake, where can they find you at?
As always, you can find me at Blake Attack 1846.
You can find me at SFMattISU. Tap the follow button on Spotify, plus button on Apple. We're also available on Amazon, CastBox, and Good Pods. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and Rumble. Turn on notifications.
This has been Blake Peterson.
I'm Matt Menson, and this has been the Cornfield Sports Pod.